A new poll shows Hillary Clinton opening up a lead over Bernie Sanders in Iowa, and it's a doozy of a lead. Clinton leads Sanders 65% to 24%. I'll let that sink in for a second.
That's crazy.
Prior to the debate, he was up in multiple polls in Iowa. Now, it wasn't as strong of a lead as in New Hampshire, but there was an indication that he had a lead, reason to believe it. But no, he's down now 41 points, according to my quick math. Now, Martin O'Malley is at 5%, which is actually impressive, I think. Larry Lessig is at 1%. CNN, bear in mind. Now, of course, we don't have Webb anymore. We don't have Webb might have been included in some of those days because he dropped out recently. But we don't have Biden anymore. And we've been speculating leading up to Biden dropping out. If he does drop out, where is his support going to go? And it seems like, at least in Iowa, it went to Hillary, which to me doesn't make any sense. The idea that people were supporting Biden as opposed to Sanders instead of supporting Biden as opposed to Clinton. Ideologically, it makes sense for me to group them together more. But now we know. And by the way, Clinton, her lead includes people who describe themselves as very liberal. Among this group, Clinton has a 23-point edge over Sanders.
And it's fucking crazy!
Well, it's just, obviously she is more liberal.
That makes no sense if you're very liberal, that you would support one of the least liberal Democrats in the history of Democrats.
Maybe they have a very liberal definition of what the word liberal means.
Yes, that's, They're not, that's not, why are you a liberal if you're going to support someone who's not?
It could be, look, devil's advocate, it could be a pragmatic thing. I'm a big liberal, and I love his positions. But if I don't think he's going to win, then I'm going to support the one who's maybe not as liberal as I am, but I want to lib. That's not my position, but that might be some people's position. But, I mean, we saw recently 90%, 95% of all Hollywood donations to Dems had gone to Hillary Clinton, not to Sanders, even though supposedly Sanders, he's like the big popular guy these days. And now in Iowa, man. And by the way, among Clinton's likely voters, 84% said they are either completely decided or have a strong preference for her. So there seems to be a level of certainty to those results.
So again, Bill Clinton was never more popular than when he got impeached. I don't know. I have to check the polling data on that, but I would put my monny on that.
Yeah, I think in his latter years, he was more popular.
Yeah. And
the economy was doing very well.
Economy was doing well, and everybody saw that. So the best thing that the Democrats or Hillary Clinton has going for her is that her opponents are Republicans, and they're transparently partisan and crazy.
Yeah. I think that Bernie Sanders needs to start up a private email server and consider bombing an embassy. He should. And get implicated. Because, it does look like, I mean, I looked at the dating of the poll, and it does seem like that sort of the media circus around that, and maybe not even just her performance, although I think that that's a large part of what's drawing this, but how clearly she's being attacked by the right, and it's so obvious now that even the mainstream media is having a hard time denying it. That it's difficult to not want to support someone who's being attacked if you agree with them on a lot of issues.
It made me want to support Hillary Clinton. It really did. It was like my reflex.
I moved to Iowa and I said I would vote for her. It's unwise.
My reflex was, of course, so you see a bigger asshole, then like, oh, she's not. And that's what they're counting on, right? So that's been this voting for the lesser of two evils for the last, I don't know, since Bill Clinton in 92, right? You're voting for the lesser of two evils. And that's where it get us where we are. We're cutting Medicare and Social Security during economic boom times. Meanwhile, in that same budget deal, by the way, $30 billion next year goes to bombing in Syria and
I had that. I didn't get to it.
I wanted to talk. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah. So $30 billion. We're just going to just throw it out the fucking window.
We're going to bomb Afghanistan too.
Oh, good.
And Iraq a little bit.
So, again, it's like, hey, you got money for Social Security? No. You got money for Medicare? No. You got any bomb money? Oh, we got bomb money. Yeah. We keep it right next to our drinking money. Nobody ever touches that shit.
Great. Yeah, we actually use a lot of the bomb money after the drinking money. Yeah. It's amazing to me, by the way, I brought this up at the production meeting, that we have an incredibly expensive Department of Defense. In this deal, we raise it by $24 billion because what we had wasn't enough. Yes. Making it even more massive. But for some reason, that doesn't include the wars.
Right.
It's like car insurance. You pay for it month after month after month, then you get an accident, and for some reason you have to pay. What was I paying for?
Right.
If war isn't included in the Department of Defense, what are we paying for?
Right.
Fancy buildings stateside? Clean, starched uniforms? Bombs and planes. I thought that's what we were buying this whole time, but apparently not, because you need an additional $30 billion for a year or two of bombing in one small part of the world.
Imagine what you could do with $30 billion.
Bomb Syria.
To end poverty, I mean, the things you could do, it's amazing.
That's half of what it would cost to put into effect Bernie Sanders' college plan, free public college for everybody.
How much would that cost?
So they say $60 billion a year.
Really?
But we could also just bomb Syria.
That's all that would
cost?
cost?
We might even bomb schools if we do it. That's what I've read.
Free college is
$60
billion a year in America?
Yeah.
We could afford to do like 3 or 4 colleges.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like we could do 3 or 4 programs. We could afford a couple $100 billion a year.
And still give the Pentagon amazing robotic killers. We could do all of that.
So where is the leader to say this shit? Why? Again, it's because of crony capitalism, because we have a corrupt elections, and because money is the king, and the Democrats got in bed with Wall Street in the 90s, and this is the result of it. No one's saying this.
Bernie Sanders is saying a lot of that.
He's the only one, yes.
Yeah, and he's a strong voice, and hopefully we'll see it in the upcoming debates. But he is largely just one. And I think Larry Lessig's message is a step or two removed, but he is trying to combat this sort of thing. That you wouldn't have leaders who say they're going to protect Social Security and then cut it, or say we need to cut spending and then give an additional $50 billion to defense. You only have that when you force them to continue to lie to you and then tell the truth to their donors because they desperately need the money to run. And if we cure the first problem, the money problem, then we can cure the eventual legislation problem.
2 quick things, you guys. Well, first off, with the Hollywood donations, I think it's 90 to 95% goes to Hillary from Hollywood folks.
Yeah.
We overestimate the depth of knowledge from a lot of people. No matter they're liberals or progressives or whatever, they have a general idea of what they like and way things should be. But as far as getting there and who's actually the proponent of those policies, they don't follow up that much. So you still get caught up in the, but her name is Clinton. I like that Bill guy. And, it'd be great to have a female president. Or the last cycle, or the beginning of Obama's cycle in 2008, it was either Hillary or it was Barack, right? And the people who ended up going with Obama after Hillary lost, because that was a fierce primary. Remember that? There was a lot of people who were like, who cares about this Obama guy? Ended up voting for him and loving him. And now that Hillary's back on, they're like, now it's our turn. They're not thinking about anything else, but now it's her turn.
Yeah,
It'd be great to see that. And so it gets to the emotional side and still not considering who you're voting for and who you're supporting. It's just, now it's time. Let's do it. Beyond anything else, let's do it.
So are you saying, I was thinking this, are you saying that you think the Democrats have a penchant for cognitive dissonance, very much like the Republicans do? She can win, so I'm going to ignore all the shit about her that I don't like.
Because it looks good, it feels good. It's what we didn't get last time.
Right.
Now it's time.
Right. So that's the thing. Like like I was saying earlier, I tweeted at the guy from Media Matters. Like, seriously, what is it that you like about her?
Yeah.
That she's wrong on all the issues until the liberal base twists her arm to make her go the right way, which is good that she at least did that. But she still hasn't said she's going to reinstate Glass-Steagall. She's going to put no regulation on Wall Street. She's not going to do anything to solve any of these problems. And she's a fucking war hawk, and things are going to get worse.
Yeah,
things
the
aren't
problem
going
is
to get
that
better.
an arm can be untwisted after the primary.
She said, yes, exactly. And she says, we're going to build the middle class. We have to build. But she doesn't say what she's going to do to build.
She said restructure the middle class.
Restructure. She doesn't say what. She doesn't say we need to ramp up on unions. We need to make it easier to organize. We need to nothing. She has no ideas. We need to restructure the tax system. We need better social. Nothing. None.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is you can compare her to a hypothetical Republican, what they would do, and what she would do would be preferable. That she's not going to pass a tax plan like a Bush or a Rubio or a
Who
Trump.
knows?
She would not that bad.
Not that, again, right, you're right, not that bad.
Not that bad.
Like Barack Obama.
That's America. We should put it on our flag. Not that bad.
Not that bad.